Okay, so like Bob said, I'm gonna walk you through how do colleges evaluate engagement? What do they value about engagement? And most importantly, what can you do to stand out in today's competitive landscape? All right, so let's start with what do colleges value most? We don't want to overlook that the foundation of college admissions is academics. Academics is always going to be that first lens that admissions officers view a student's application. Um, and it's really the reason why it's going to always continue as that first filter is because colleges need to know that a student can handle the academic rigor at their institution. This is also why we're seeing the rise again of the standardized test and the standardized test regaining importance. As more and more students' transcripts are looking exactly the same, colleges need a way to figure out how to differentiate. So that's why we're seeing that reliance on standardized testing again. But it's also why engagement becomes so important because engagement can be that differentiator. It can make a student stand out. So what we're seeing at public universities like UT Austin, Michigan, and the UC system is that fit to major is becoming very important. So colleges are going to want to see that initiative, impact, and that evidence of a clear progression of interest across several years, what Lisa was talking about. So that's really what's going to separate a strong candidate from a great candidate. All right, so competitiveness. So selectivity is no longer just about the Ivies. So we can see, based on some of these numbers here, that it's becoming the norm for state flagship universities to have single-digit acceptance rates. And the reality is of admissions today is that you're going to need both academic strength and a compelling story of engagement in order to stand out when we are seeing these single-digit acceptance rates. Lisa, do you want to add anything about that?
I think you make such an important point is that we're seeing this both in public universities, like for example at UT, if you're not in the top 5%, you're somewhere around a 9 to 10%, acceptance rate. Well, that's not really, that's same that's equal to USC, right? So just to kind of frame this, and the reason that we show this is not to scare people. It's because it has changed so much since we all went to college. For me, because I've been doing this a long time, as long as I've been doing this, sometimes I have to catch myself with a student yesterday. I'm like, oh, Boston College, and I'm thinking, it's one acceptance rate. And then we look at it and I'm like, oh, that's why I always check, right? And I was kind of shocked. I'm like, wow, that's gone in half in like a few years. And so we show people this because it is really important as you're entering this journey to have good information about what the current landscape of college admission is so that you and your family, as you begin on this journey, have realistic expectations about how much more competitive this is.
So we know that because of this competitive part of the competitiveness is because schools like UT Austin are just getting like a huge volume of strong applicants. Last year, UT Austin found themselves with over 90,000 applicants. And so we have to find ways in order to kind of cut through the noise of that level and that volume of applicants. So again, it just really goes back to engagement can not only help a student be differentiated in the noise of that volume of applications, it can also be used to show that a student belongs at that university. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of how you can use engagement to not only show that you're prepared to be at that university, but also to show that that student belongs at that university. So we know that certain majors like business, engineering, computer science, nursing, architecture, often these
Pre-med, I forgot earlier
pre-med,
too.
yes,
Pre-med, yeah.
are highly selective. So what really matters when you're applying to one of these highly selective majors is that your application needs to show not only interest but also preparedness. And so again, the engagement can really help show that not only that I'm interested in the major, but I'm also prepared to be successful in this major. So let's jump into kind of how a university actually evaluates engagement. So we're going to use UT Austin as an example of how they use engagement as part of their application process. So UT Austin evaluates every applicant with kind of these questions in mind. So the first question is, does this student have the maturity and self-efficacy to complete college successfully? So they're looking for applicants who are demonstrating that they're most likely going to graduate. That is an important quality that institutions are constantly asking themselves. The other thing is, does the student show leadership potential? And this is really important to key in on that word potential. So a student doesn't necessarily need to have already demonstrated that they have started a business and they are, CEO of that business and they are already, turning a profit. What they need to show is, like Lisa was saying, that wave, that incremental growth towards being a leader, that they first were involved and then they took another step and took another position. And slowly over time, and a university application reader would be able to see, like, given time, this student is going to develop into a leader. So I think oftentimes we want to make sure that we differentiate between leadership opportunities don't necessarily have to be that they were CEO and founder of their own company. The next is that is there genuine interest in the chosen major and also a strong likelihood that they're going to remain in that major. That's really important what UT Austin is evaluating students on. This is kind of why we always say, like, there's no back door into these colleges. They are going to be able to see if if you have genuine interest, and also they want you to remain in the major that they're going to admit you in. The other thing that they're looking for is not only has the student experienced adversity, but have they recovered from that adversity? And adversity can be, something as small as, you didn't get a part in a play, and kind of what did you do to, recover, all the way through, some actual personal, tragedy. So again, that's a spectrum of what adversity is, but, being able to show that resilience. And finally, most universities are looking to see how is the student going to enrich their campus community? How are they going to leave that campus a better place than how they found it? How are they going to, bring those leadership skills, develop those leadership skills in order to, enrich that campus for other students? So really what UT is constantly looking at is those markers that are going to predict the success of its applicants. And ultimately that's what's going to, help the university decide if they'll extend an offer of admission. The other thing that is unique about UT Austin is that they give students the opportunity to tell this story, this wave, to weave these threads together. And they give applicants that opportunity to, show their tapestry by the expanded resume. So first I want to explain what the expanded resume is not. Okay, so it is not your traditional 1 to 2 page resume. The expanded resume can be sometimes, 6 to 8 pages long. It is not just a rehashing of your transcript. And it's not just a list of clubs. So again, like, quality over quantity is what the expanded resume is about. So what is the UT resume? What should it look like? It should be a story of your growth, your engagement and your impact. It's an opportunity to highlight academic projects, involvement beyond just being a member of something, but also it can highlight your journey in becoming a leader. And that leadership position can be formal or informal. It's really important that you use the expanded resume to not just tell the things that you did, but really show. So use concrete examples, show outcomes. Also use the bullet points to provide points of reflection, showing how did you grow, how did you learn, and also use those bullet points to make a compelling case for your admission.
And something I'll add here is that Molly used UT Austin as an example, partially because that's where she has been, knows that system. But one thing that, because we're based in Austin, many of our students apply to UT Austin. What we have found though is that this playbook for UT Austin works beautifully for other colleges, like beautifully. Now, we don't send this really long resume to the other colleges because it's too long for other colleges. But even getting every student to start with this long resume lets us get their whole story on paper. And then it helps us know, for if we say have like a 2 or 3 page resume, okay, are the most compelling things we have on here? So one of the things that we have noticed over the years at College MatchPoint is that while this is the UT playbook, it plays exceptionally well all the way to the Ivy Leagues, to the other flagships across the board, because it's really showing a focused student and hitting on really things that are universally important and admissions, but other schools maybe aren't quite as direct on what they're looking for, but it makes an excellent applicant. So that's been one of the kind of fun things over the years as we have, grown into this, is to see how this playbook is a great playbook for most colleges. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, that fit to major is
Mhm.
really just becoming something that we're seeing across a lot of institutions for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so how does a student kind of experience the power of fit? So students who stand out show that authentic alignment. Again, really demonstrating, like Lisa was saying before, it is okay if a student explores something and the outcome is that they find out it is not a good fit. That is just as important to share as part of their application of I explored and found things that I don't like. Obviously, their courses, their test scores, activities, and essay, all of this needs to show that it's reinforcing their academic direction. And it doesn't need to be a straight line. It is okay that if their story of fit to major is lots of different, sidetracks and maybe missteps, those are just as important to demonstrate your power of fit. At UT Austin, and we're seeing this again across other universities, they're asking students to apply to their first and second choice major. And so the first choice major really needs to show clear preparation for that field. It's really kind of what we say is consistency and credibility. So that authenticity of a student's story can really help a student relay that they are prepared for that major.
And I think someone asked a question that I think is worth addressing to everyone, which is how in the world can we expect a 16-year-old to know their major? And Molly and I are both counselors by training, so developmentally, I don't disagree. And unfortunately, like this is where we are in college admissions. What I will say, having been kind of a skeptic of it in the beginning, is I think students learn a lot by trying on majors and having that experience is a really great growth experience for college. Now, I think what it misses in my experience keeping up with students, there's still the rate of students changing their major hasn't changed a ton if you look at the research. So, a student may go in and then they may learn about some other great thing and they may, try to switch to that. But I do think that career awareness and preparedness um, at the high school level has been shown to be a very successful and powerful thing for students. And so, um, even if maybe they end up with another interest in addition to that one and they merge those together or whatever, I think for most students this ends up to being a positive. There will be those students who maybe can't narrow it down to one thing, so they have two or three things they love and they have activities in those, and then we target their college list towards colleges where that's going to really fit well. But overall, I think this is the really become quite a big part of college admissions. And so, whatever we all think about it, it is a pretty important part. And there's really, at this point in college admissions, unless a student wants to go to a small liberal arts college, which very few of them do, even though I think they're great, you could go there and be fine. But yeah, I think that the major thing is super important.
Yeah, and I
We
think
want to
that
take a we
oh, go
want to
ahead,
take a
Doc.
couple of minutes. Yeah, we want to take a couple of minutes now to really dial into the kind of activities that might stand out most. Molly and Lisa, could you take us through the next couple of slides to really give us a sense of that?
Absolutely. Um, so when it comes to extracurriculars, quality beats quantity every time. So colleges are going to be most impressed by 4 to 6 meaningful commitments rather than just like a laundry list of clubs. So again, having that initiative and impact, so that wave, that thread of development from the freshman year, to the junior, and then really services that connect to your true interests are going to carry more weight. And again, I really can't impress enough. Informal roles, don't underestimate them. They can really demonstrate leadership and initiative. It doesn't need to be a formal title of a president or a vice president. It can be an informal leadership role.
And an example of an informal leadership might be I help raise my brother and my sister. I work in a family business, there's lots of different types of informal leadership for sure.
Absolutely. Um, so initiative and impact. So colleges really view service as an expression of your character. And one thing that I want to make sure that is clear is that service doesn't necessarily equal volunteering. That is definitely a way to have service and to make an impact on your community. But there are so many other ways to serve your community. Students who are they often will ask me like, okay, so do I just need to volunteer at the local food bank? Like, no, that's not an authentic way. Obviously, if that is something you're interested in, that is going to be an authentic way to give back to your community. But there are lots of ways that you can serve your community. I have a student who really like she is really involved in soccer. And so she finds a way to donate gently used soccer goals and balls to the community that doesn't have access to those types of equipment. So again, she did that on her own. She took initiative, she made an impact, it showed leadership, but it also showed a way that you can make an impact on her community. And what's really important is that you want admissions officers to see what you learned and not just what you did. So making sure you're using those community services to do that.
And then I'll jump in here on the highly selective colleges and majors. For students who are aiming and have the academic background for this, you really in your activities want to be engaging at a regional, state, and national level by the time you're at junior year. So that's not starting in as a freshman again, but that's where you're headed. You also want to be that student who solves problems. You see a problem, you try to solve it, you create a legacy. And I would say STEM students, and I would think we're really to the point where business students are pretty much in this category as well, is you're going to have multi-year engagement with, the ability to show work that you've done. That's going to be really important. And we have other webinars where we talk about that. And then independent research can also be a great way to do that. But what we're really showing here is if the student knows and is, the kind of student that is aiming at the very top, this is a little, we change the rubric just a little bit, and you've got to have a little different goals.
So what are kind of these traits of a student who are applying to the highly selective schools? What do they have in common? Okay, so all of them have taken the most rigorous courses offered at their school, and they are earning A's. They're ranking in the top 5 to 10% of their class, and they also have the test scores to match. Their resume is demonstrating that initiative and impact. And their essays are not just a strong reflection of their writing skills, but they're also being able to demonstrate through their writing their intellectual curiosity and their unique perspective through that deep reflection of their activities. And so all of this becomes a package. So you really need to think of it as having, a full way to use your academics, engagement, and that reflection, making sure it's showing up across your essays, test scores, the expanded resume, your transcript, even the common application, even those fields in the common application. They need to all work together to tell one consistent story of who you are, what you've done, and why you're ready for that next step.